Good morning and welcome to Jason Prokop, legislative candidate from District 27. Thank you, Jason, for joining us for our virtual legislative candidate meetings. My name is Gina Ragland, and joining me today is Susan DeCamp, volunteer state president, and advocacy lead volunteers Bob Lassen, Ira Nathan, and Mike Barwig. Jason, we appreciate your taking the time to meet and discuss issues of importance to the 50-plus voter and their families in Nebraska. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded and will be shared with AARP members across your district prior to the election. So Jason, to get us started, if you want to start by giving us a little background about yourself and your campaign, and maybe 5 minutes or less would be great. And then once we've completed your opening, we'll move into the questions. So I'll pitch it back to you, Jason. Welcome.
Sounds great. And thanks, Gina, for the invitation. I thank you all. It's great to be with you. So just kind of by way of background, I guess I'll start a little bit personally and then jump into the professional. So personally, I grew up, was in Crete, Nebraska, so proud Crete Cardinal graduate from Crete High there, and still have family down in that area. But then went to college up here in Lincoln at Nebraska Wesleyan, and so have been a resident of Lincoln for many years. On a little bit more on the personal side, my wife and two kids, have a 9 and 11-year-old, and we really enjoy kind of spending time together and all those activities that we get to do in that. And they're in such a great age. On the professional side, so I've kind of got a long track record in the public service sector and government sector. Something I take a lot of pride in. I worked on the staff of U.S. Senator Ben Nelson in various roles for many years, both in his Lincoln office and in his Washington, D.C. office. Also worked as chief of staff at an organization called the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, which represents all of the state insurance directors for all the states and the territories in the United States. So have a little bit of an insurance regulation background in my portfolio. And then also have worked at the Nebraska Department of Transportation. I was head of external affairs there. And really kind of that was all about working with the public to try and inform and make sure they're educated about transportation projects and all those transportation projects that we love when they're done, but all of the inconveniences that come with them while they're happening, trying to ease that burden on folks while those are taking place. And then kind of move forward to where I'm at currently, which is an organization called First Five Nebraska, which we've had the good pleasure of getting to work with Gina and AARP on some legislation in the past. But our organization is focused on really moving public policy forward that supports early childhood care and education. So it's all about making childcare more accessible and affordable for families and supporting our childcare providers. So that's where I'm at currently. I'm the director of the organization. And so that kind of brings us up to speed to what I do today.
Perfect. Thank you, Jason, and thanks for the introduction and the background. We're now going to move into the question section, and we have provided you ahead of time with a set of 3 questions that are pertaining to the 50-plus in Nebraska. Again, these are issues when we talk to our members that are coming to the surface, and so, of course, it's our job now to have these conversations with you as candidates to talk about the issues. Looking to allot 5 minutes for each question just to stay in the interest of time. So we'll begin with question 1, which is health, caregiving, and home and community-based care. And Ira Nathan's going to take that. So go ahead, Ira.
Hi, Jason. Pleasure to meet you. Jason, I was an actuary, and we used to work with the NEIC all the time, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
We love our actuaries at the NEIC, so I appreciate the job you do. Yeah.
Well, very good. 84% of Nebraskans over 45 say staying in their homes as they get older is extremely important. Home and community-based services and area agencies on aging, kind of like aging partners, become extremely important assets for the caregivers as they care for loved ones. Home care not only meets the needs of the loved ones, but it also provides relief to an already strained long-term care industry. So the questions, I actually have 2 questions I wanted to ask you. The first one is, What would you do to protect and or expand home and community-based programs, particularly recruitment and retention of sufficient workforce and adequate funding for the programs and services for older Nebraskans and their families? And our second question is, what will you do to support the 179,000 unpaid family caregivers in Nebraska?
Yeah. Well, thanks for those questions. And I've got to confess, this is this question in particular is kind of really near and dear to me, because my wife works in home health care in that sector. So so I get a little bit of experience of hearing about it at home, and she works for a company and from her home state of Virginia. So not a Nebraska company, but I hear a lot about kind of the sector and things that happen in home health care just from that experience. So I guess first and foremost, I think it's really important, because it's got to be we've got to create a system that it's really a choice for people to be able to stay in their homes and age in place. I think that's got to be a goal for the state, as far as being able to set mechanisms up so that can actually happen. Because I think we should all strive to try and deliver on that promise of what people actually want. And so I think that's really important. Now, as far as how we actually achieve that, and your question specifically around workforce recruitment and retention, I think a lot of it comes back to compensation and the wages that we are paying these folks to make them want to stay in the field and see it really as a career and not just as a job. Because and I know, again, from kind of my wife working in the sector, that these are people that are really passionate about what they do, and they are part of the family. Quite frankly, they are not just there to help mom or dad. They are part of the family because of the kind of care that they're delivering. And that's part of it too. Not just the compensation piece, although that probably is the most important part of it. Is that also thinking about apprenticeship programs and career pathways, so that people are considering this as a field. As our state's population is getting older and the needs for more people to work in this sector, we've got to match that with things like apprenticeship programs, things like creating career pathways and programs with our institutions of higher education, whether those be community colleges or other programs, so that we're meeting the need so that people can make that choice that they want to make. Your second part of your question was around kind of the unpaid caregivers right now, and how do we support that? I think something great that happened in the Nebraska Legislature around that caregiver tax credit. I mean, I was really excited to see that move forward. I think that's a great step in the right direction. So I give credit to AARP and all of the work you did to move that forward. So I think that's great. I think if there's opportunities to build upon that you have ideas, it's something I obviously would want to work with you all on. But I think it all, from my perspective, it comes back to and how we approach the state budget, and whether or not we're funding the programs that provide that kind of supports that caregivers need. Because I mean, it is hard work. It is a lot of work. It is, and I look at the state budget as really kind of a moral document as to how we treat people. And so I think investing in the kind of programs that support the caregivers that are unpaid, maybe not even to a financial sense, but to a support sense, is really important. So that would be one way that I would approach it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jason, and kudos and thanks to your wife too. It's difficult world out there, especially in the direct care arena. So we appreciate all that she does for that as well. Switching over now, question number 2, we're going to talk more on the consumer fraud, exploitation, and protections, and Susan DeCamp is going to take that. So go ahead, Susan.
Hello, Jason. So nice to have you with us today.
Thank you.
So scammers are increasingly targeting older adults with scams such as wire transfers, gift card scams. I'm sure you've heard of the grandparent scam,
Yeah.
and popping up are new schemes involving real property as well. So nationwide, the average victim of elder fraud lost nearly $34,000 due to these crimes in 2023. And in Nebraska, the FTC showed that there were 4,643 fraud reports made. Nearly 9 in 10 consumers agree that lawmakers need to do more to protect consumers from fraud and scams. So with that in mind, our question for you is, consumers lose billions of dollars each year to online, financial, property, and other types of fraud. What will you do to ensure that Nebraskans are protected against fraud and deceptive business practices and provide opportunities for redress to victims of fraud? Would you support enacting laws to require merchants that sell gift cards to post notices? Would you support enactment of a consumer fraud restitution fund? And would you support implementation of preventative measures to assist in combating owner and seller housing impersonation fraud?
Yeah. So I think just to kind of directly answer those three specific questions, the answer is yes to all of those things. I think that's important. And it's amazing the level of sophistication that these fraudsters and the scams have undertaken. I even within my job here, I mean, not that long ago, there was, just on a personal basis, there was a phishing email that my staff received telling them to go buy that I had told them to go buy gift cards for something. So it can happen. It can happen anywhere to anyone at any time. So we have to be extremely vigilant on that front across the board. I do want to give, I think, kudos to the AARP, because I know you've done a lot of education pieces on this, which I think they are great. I think education is a big part of it, of just being informed. And what you mentioned about posting notices, I think that's really important. Education, I don't think you can undereducate folks when it comes to this sort of stuff, just so they're aware of the current current things that are happening, and to be aware of, to try and prevent those sort of things. And I also, I think, the reason people are conducting these fraudulent activities and doing the gift card scams in the way, yes, one, it's because they are getting more sophisticated, but also two, I think, I think they look at it as maybe a risk benefit agreement where the penalties are not deterrent enough to actually keep them from thinking about doing it. So I think, looking at some of our statutes around theft by deception, theft by impersonation, and what are the penalties required, maybe we need to take a look at making adjustments there, because it doesn't seem to be slowing people down in terms of them actually attempting to carry out this type of fraud and scams on older Nebraskans, but on all Nebraskans too. So I think we need to evaluate there as well.
Great. Thank you for your answers.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you, Jason, especially for your support of those three initiatives in general. Our last question, we're going to switch now over into affordable housing, livable communities. Our, of course, big point is helping people stay in their homes and communities. So Bob Lassen's going to address that question. Go ahead, Bob.
Yes, Jason, thank you for giving us your time today. AARP primary goal was to allow people to age in place and stay in the lowest level of care and cost as long as possible. To that end, I'm going to have a couple questions today. One of them is concerning housing and just a little background information. Zoning obstacles allowed just single-family residential homes. In these communities, zoning does not include other housing types, such as accessory dwelling units, manufactured homes, intergenerational duplexes, or apartment buildings. And all of these may be better options for elderly. And then the second thing we'll talk about is a little bit about homestead exemption. Nebraskans over 65 are the fastest growing segment of our population, and research shows that most want to remain in their homes and communities as they age. As housing costs continue to increase, older adults are unable to find housing to meet their needs when seeking to downsize, and thus are being pushed out of communities and homes that they've lived in for generations. What will you do to support, incentivize, and ensure the creation of affordable and diverse housing options, such as accessory dwelling units, intergenerational housing again, manufactured housing, and townhomes? And secondly, this deals with the homestead exemption. Will you fight to ensure that homestead exemption program is maintained and protected to ensure that older Nebraskans that qualify continue to have access to the tax relief program that allows them to age in place?
Yeah, well, thanks for the question, Bob. So on the first segment of that, so I guess just housing generally, I think we all understand that Nebraska is in a housing crisis at large, but this really affects Nebraskans 65 plus, like you mentioned. And so I think when we're thinking about types of homes we're building or opportunities for housing for folks as maybe they're transitioning from one type of house, or if they want to downsize. And again, I think get back to talking about choice there. I don't think we can leave any stone unturned as to how we address that problem. So things you mentioned around looking at how zoning is done, and if we need to make adjustments there, I think I would want to examine. I think looking at how communities are being built and those livable communities, and making sure that it's community centric to meet the needs of Nebraskans, older Nebraskans, so that they're the style of house that meets those needs, because there's maybe unique needs that come with what they are looking for in a home. I think is really important. So I don't want to write anything off when it comes to how we address that shortage, because it's going to take an ability to make sure that we build those homes, but then also as people are transitioning, have access to the types of homes that actually fit their needs in the communities that they want to be in. Because again, kind of harking back to what I said in the first question, I want to make sure that it is a choice and on terms that folks want to make those types of decisions. On the homestead exemption piece, I'll tell you, as I've been out knocking doors here for many, many months and talking to thousands of voters in LD 27 on the homestead exemption specifically, that's come up a number of times. What I found has been really interesting is, and to answer the question directly, is that I think that program needs to be strengthened, and making sure that it's maintained so that people are taking advantage of it, particularly people that have been in their homes for decades, so that they're not priced out of it based on taxes that are seem to be ever growing on the property tax front. But as I've talked to voters in LD 27, another piece that I've heard about is that just as those evaluations have been going up, that they've run into some challenges with just qualifications there. And I know the structure of how that works, but looking at especially those that have not just owner occupied, but owner occupied for decades, right? How does that working for those folks that really they want to stay in their homes, and making sure that property taxes are not taking them out of those homes because they can't pay the ever-growing property tax bill that they're receiving. So I think there's even a way to look at it from that standpoint, to make sure the program is working well for those that really want to stay in their homes. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jason, and thank you, Bob, for the question. Jason, we're kind of coming to the end of our meeting time now. I do want to close things out and give you back a few minutes to just talk in general about maybe some of what your priorities are for serving in the legislature. I know you've kind of touched a little bit on some of these, but are there specific issues that you plan to work on or address during your time as a state senator? So with that, I'll give you the time back. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah. No, thanks, Gina. So, and really I think my number one thing, and I'm hoping that, you know, as a state, we can really be laser focused on is workforce retention and recruitment. Thinking about, you know, and it gets to the very first question, is thinking about the sectors that really we want to develop and make sure that we have supports in to meet the needs of our state. You know, we hear a lot about the tens of thousands of unfilled jobs in Nebraska. We hear about brain drain. You know, I want to work on issues as a state senator, if elected, that are going to be the reasons why people stay here and why, irregardless of age, right? And why they choose to come here. So, but part of that gets back to workforce and making sure that they have a job that they see not just as a job, but as a career, and they can grow in that field and meet a need that our state has in the workforce space. Another area, and again, we kind of talked about it, is housing. And how are we addressing the housing crisis that we're facing? I think it ties back into the workforce conversation too. How are we creating affordable housing situation so that, again, people feel as though they have a place that is going to be a home? And so, and that gets back to, again, I think that recruitment and retention side of things is, you know, I've talked to employers over the course of running for office, and how many times I hear from them as to, you know, we tried to hire somebody, but they struggled to find a house that was affordable to them. And so we have to do something about it. And kind of back to my response about we can't leave any stone unturned. We have to be creative in how we think about this, and we can't let there be barriers put up unnecessarily, whether it's regulatory barriers or anything else that doesn't allow us to kind of look at every tool in the toolbox as to how we address what really is a crisis when it comes to housing. So those are two big areas I would like to work on.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you again for taking the time to visit with us. We wish you the best with your campaign. We look forward to working with you in the legislature. And thank you for meeting with AARP today. Take care.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks.
Bye, Jason.
Great day.